In today's show, I'll be breaking down the latest Bitcoin technical analysis as Bitcoin and all the major alts are currently pumping back in the green. And check this out. MicroStrategy bags an additional 14,620 Bitcoins ahead of the potential ETF approval. And quoting Max Kaiser, source, MicroStrategy is prepping a $5 billion mixed debt and equity shelf offering. Another 100,000 Bitcoin buy. What do you think? Also in today's show, we'll be discussing the latest with spot Bitcoin ETF could result in millions of unbacked BTC, according to this analyst. We'll also be sharing ARK Investors Cathie Wood sees short-term effect of the spot Bitcoin ETF as sell on the news. We'll also be discussing the 5 reasons why the spot Bitcoin ETF approval will send the Bitcoin price action north of $100,000 per coin. And we'll also be discussing the latest from analyst Willy Woo. He shared 3 Bitcoin price prediction scenarios, including one reaching $11.5 million per coin. We'll also be taking a look at the overall crypto market. All this, plus so much more in today's show. But anyways, fam, let's kick this baby off. If you're new to the channel, make sure to smash that subscribe button to receive daily premium crypto news alerts every single day, just like this. Also, be sure to smash the like and hit the bell icon to turn on all notifications. It also helps out tremendously with the YouTube algorithm, and I greatly appreciate that. Today is podcast episode number 1504. I'm your host, JV, and today is December 27th, 2023. So let's kick it off with our market watch as we do each and every day. I'm pulling up Coin 360. You should be able to see this here on your screen. You can see all the major cryptos pumping back in the green. Bitcoin on the cusp of recapturing 43.3, up over 2.2% on the day. Ether killing it, up 6%, trending above $2,350. We got Cardano up 7%. We got BNB up almost 6%. And then we have some of the cryptos like Optimism up almost 30%. So it's been a wild ride. And getting a monthly perspective on the overall market, you can see Bitcoin is now up over 15% on the month, Ether 14%, BNB 35%, and Solana 89%, AVAX 103%, Cardano 64%. XRP gains are very modest. In fact, the most modest out of the top cryptos, only up 3% on the month. And checking out coinmarketcap.com, the current crypto market cap is back on the rise at 1.69 trillion with about 73 billion in volume for the past 24 hours. Bitcoin dominance back on the decline at 50% even, with the Ether dominance back on the rise at 16.7%. And checking out the top 100 crypto gainers of the past 24 hours, we got Satoshi Vision, believe it or not, leading the pack today, up 41%. Must have been some big news. Let me know what's going on with SV there. Optimism also up 29%. Astar up almost 25%. Below that, we have Arbitrum, Synthetics, and Immutable. And I am curious, during this Bitcoin bull run, which altcoins are you most bullish on for this run up? Let me know, fam. And checking out the crypto bubbles to get a visual perspective on the daily, you can see virtually all the major cryptos pumping in the green and pretty impressive gains. We got Optimism up over 29%, XEC up almost 10%, Tau up over 22%, Synthetics up 13%, Satoshi Vision 40%, ASTR 25%, just massive overall gainers. And if we zoom out on the monthly, good Lord, talk about alt season. Sats is up 531%, Bonk up 300%, Ordi up 250%, Corjai up 231%, Beam up 111%, HNT 161%, SEI 108%, BitTorrent 154%, Osmo 163%, Near 133%, Stacks 134%, Solana 94%. So you have an abundance of these alts up literally over 100%. Pretty impressive. And checking out the Crypto Greed and Fear Index, we're currently rated a 73 still in greed. Yesterday, 71. Last week, 74. And last month, a 66 in greed. So there you have it. How do you feel we'll likely finish out this year of 2023 in this month of December? Let me know in that live chat. But anyways, we have a lot to cover, so let's break into some Bitcoin technical analysis. Check out the charts where the Bitcoin price action is likely to go next. If you're just joining us, make sure to smash the like and subscribe to the #1 daily Bitcoin pod. I greatly appreciate the support, family. yeah, these 3 Bitcoin metrics say a fresh Bitcoin price move is imminent. So let's freaking go. Number 1, trader on Bitcoin price says seems like a move is imminent. We have Bitcoin have flagged over Christmas, dip into lows of 41,650, but the tide can soon change. And guess what? It already is. For analyst Matthew Hyland, he talks about coming in the form of the Bollinger Bands and the RSI. These have provided advanced notice of upside in the recent months. The daily Bollinger Bands are back to squeezing to that level that triggered the last 2 moves up through 30 and 40,000. So with the daily RSI at 2-month lows and the 3-day MACD currently crossing down with less than 3 days to negate, it seems like a move is imminent here. And lo and behold, we just had that imminent move. We're up over $1,000 on the daily. Next up, Bollinger Bands constrict. Bollinger Bands are a popular volatility indicator which closely tracks the Bitcoin price action, suggesting when volatility can break out. Now, currently, the time frame on the daily bands are narrowing after a period of expansion, something which, while not necessarily straight away, precedes a new round of volatility. And earlier in the year, the bands collapsed to an extremely narrow position. Hyland posted this chart showing how comparatively tight the bands currently are. Now, how many of you use the Bollinger Bands in your analysis on your charts on TradingView? Let me know. We typically check that out when we do our pump watches. We'll also talk about the RSI flushing out the oversold levels. The Relative Strength Index has proven a faithful tool for Bitcoin traders during the Q4 bullish comeback. The classic momentum oscillator, which offers insight into how overbought or oversold Bitcoin is at a given price, has seen something of a reset on the daily timeframes in the second half of December. And here you're looking at the Bitcoin 1-day chart. Now at 53 as far as the RSI, it is firmly below the overbought 70 line and even further below its month-to-date peak of 76. Now, longer time frames are just as promising, as noted last week by veteran trader Peter Brandt, quoting him here from X. Some analysts claim that Bitcoin is terribly overbought. In fact, the monthly RSI is currently at the sweet spot, where previous bull markets have greatly accelerated their advances. Not predicting this, just pointing it out. Now, the MACD also counts down for the bears, another bullish indicator, may yet throw a spanner in the works when it comes to Happy New Year for the Bitcoin bulls. As you can see here, this is the Bitcoin 3-day chart showing you with the MACD. This is the moving average convergence divergence, which on the 3-day time frames is threatening a bearish trend flip. Hyland notes several days remain in order for the signal to negate itself, thanks to the price action. Quoting him here, Cross was 100% accurate the whole year, leading to lower and higher prices after. And he tweeted on X, the Bitcoin 3-day MACD is currently crossing down. The next 3-day candle closes in 3 days. So 3 days to negate based on price action. Cross was 100% accurate the whole year. And the last bull cross up occurred around 27, which we updated at the time. And now a little more technical analysis for where we're currently at. This was just published minutes before I went live. Bitcoin has been stuck between the 20-day exponential moving average of 42.5 and the overhead resistance of 44.7, as you can see on the daily chart right here. The price action of the past few days has formed an ascending triangle pattern that will complete on a break and close above 44.7. So we got to keep our eyes out on that, with our next target being $49,178. And contrarily, if the price turns down and breaks below the triangle, it'll invalidate the positive setup. That may trigger the stops of several traders, pulling the price to the 50-day simple moving average, sitting just north of $40,000, and then later on to $37,980. So there you have it, my crypto fam. Let me know if you feel we're likely to continue marching north for the end of this year, or do you think we'll pull back some, continue consolidating? Let me know your thoughts. Welcome, everybody. We still have so much to cover, so let's dive into our next story of the day. We discussed the latest Bitcoin technical analysis. Now for breaking news. MicroStrategy just made a major purchase, as the headline reads here. MicroStrategy bags 14,620 Bitcoins ahead of the potential ETF approval. That's right. MicroStrategy, the first publicly traded company to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, making big moves. MicroStrategy and its subsidiaries purchased another 14,620 BTC for $615 million in cash between November 20th and December 26th. The firm officially announced in its 8K filing with the US SEC the latest Bitcoin stash cost MicroStrategy roughly $42,000 per Bitcoin, including fees and other expenses, so they're already in the green. The purchase brings MicroStrategy and its subsidiaries aggregate Bitcoin holdings to now 189,150 Bitcoin, putting them at an aggregate purchase price of approximately $5.9 billion and an average purchase price per Bitcoin of roughly $31,100. MicroStrategy's latest Bitcoin purchase follows another massive purchase of 16,000 Bitcoin November 2023, which the firm acquired at the price of $36,000 per Bitcoin. The company previously bought 6,000 in September and October and 12,000 back in June. The acquisition is another evidence of MicroStrategy's commitment to the Bitcoin investment, coming in line with the vision of its co-founder and the major Bitcoin bull, the Giga Chad himself, Michael Saylor. The announcement comes just a few weeks before January 10th, the day when the community is widely anticipating to see the spot Bitcoin ETF or several such ETFs approved by the SEC. Let me know if you feel we'll likely get this approval in January. And according to Saylor, a spot Bitcoin ETF may be the biggest development on Wall Street in 30 years because such a product would open the door to mainstream retail and institutional investors that previously haven't been able to access BTC. Not everyone is optimistic about the implications of the spot Bitcoin ETF coming onto the market. According to Trezor's Bitcoin analyst, Joseph Tetek, a spot Bitcoin ETF may take people further from self-custody and potentially create millions of unbacked Bitcoin. And I'm actually going to be diving deeper into this particular scenario a little later in the show. But here's something Max Keiser shared. He says the source is MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy is prepping a $5 billion mixed debt and equity shelf offering. Could they be prepping to purchase another 100,000 Bitcoin? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, Saylor's going hard. I hear they already own 0.9% of the Bitcoin supply. That's just the company. And if you add Michael Saylor's personal stash, well above 1%. So you know he's holding on to a lot of Bitcoin. Now let's see what Dylan LeClaire added here. They can only issue another 4.7 million shares, so 3.1 billion at today's prices, with Saylor's retaining 50% of the voting shares. Good to note. And also, here's the tweet that Michael Saylor shared, and I copied and posted here. MicroStrategy acquired the 14,620 Bitcoin for $615 million at the average price of $42,000 per Bitcoin. And as of the 26th of which is yesterday, MicroStrategy now hodls over 189,000 Bitcoin acquired for $5.9 billion at the average price of $31,168. Now here's what Adam Back added to this. Note how this works is MicroStrategy sold 610 million new shares at the market, diluting the existing shareholders' percentage ownership. But it uses the proceeds to buy Bitcoin. And in fact, again, the Bitcoin share ratio increased. The net effect is about 1.4% anti-dilutive in Bitcoin per share. So there you have it. I mean, clearly a bullish move, knows what he is doing. Now, kudos to Max Keiser because he made a tweet back in, I think it was June of last year. Yep, June 14, 2022. Here's what he wrote. MicroStrategy has room on the balance sheet to buy another 500 million in Bitcoin. What did they just announce today? Purchasing 600 million worth of Bitcoin. So clearly the high priest knows his ish. I'm hearing the board has given Saylor the green light to back up the truck and buy size. He is chilling on his yacht at present, but will make the decision soon. So shout out to Michael Saylor and Max Keiser. Max also tweeted this morning, sadistic state actors breed hopelessly dependent drug-addled wards of the state with all testosterone removed. Bitcoin fixes this. Titans of humanity, like Michael Saylor, are engaging in massive speculative attacks on status with BTC. The new dark age is ending. Preach. This is a speculative attack against fiat currency. And guess who's leading the charge? The one and only Giga Chad, Michael Saylor. So what are your thoughts on that? How much of the Bitcoin supply do you think MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor will ultimately own, considering they already own roughly 1% of all the Bitcoin in existence? Nick, thanks for subbing. We appreciate that. It's all in the hat. Hat for stack. Let's go. But anyways, let's dive into our next story of the day and discuss this ETF warning. Check this out. The headline reads, spot Bitcoin ETF could result in millions of unbacked BTC. According to this analyst, the potential approval of the spot Bitcoin ETF in the US will trigger fundamental problems related to the original vision of Bitcoin by the anonymous creator, Mr. Nakamoto. According to one analyst, the concept of the spot Bitcoin ETF, an investment product that tracks the price of Bitcoin by holding Bitcoin, conflicts with the idea of self-custody. According to Joseph Tech. The Bitcoin analyst at the hardware crypto firm Trezor. And shout out to Trezor, definitely one of my favorite cold storage wallets. Unlike a Bitcoin ETF, self-custodial crypto storage solutions allow users to own Bitcoin by taking full responsibility for holding the private key or the actual asset. Now, quoting him here from the interview, in principle, spot Bitcoin ETFs take people further from self-custody and potentially introduce a systemic risk, as ETFs will be safer on the surface than the exchanges. One possible consequence of spot Bitcoin ETF approval could be the large quantities of Bitcoin, which could be stored in central locations where the government can seize it, the analyst said, referring to the scenario seen in the confiscation of the gold in the United States back in the 1930s. I think the Gold Confiscation Act was 1933. Correct me if I'm wrong. Quoting him here, and while a spot Bitcoin ETF could make exposure to Bitcoin price movements more accessible to individuals and institutions alike, simply buying Bitcoin through conventional means would offer the same exposure. Do we really need ETFs for this? Let me know your thoughts on that. And I think he makes a great point there. My mouse acting up again. Another significant issue with the spot Bitcoin ETF is that the ETF hodlers will not have the option to withdraw the underlying asset. Instead, these assets are held in aggregate by the ETF itself, which raises the possibility of the unchecked issuance of paper Bitcoin, not supported by actual Bitcoin. The supply, which is capped at 21 million per coin, quoting the analyst again, the result could be the creation of millions of unbacked Bitcoin, which would distort genuine markets and depress the value of the real Bitcoin, all while handing greater agency to the giants of centralized traditional finance, the very antithesis of Satoshi's original vision. Now, his remarks on self-custody versus spot Bitcoin ETFs flag a potential downside amid the growing optimism of the market, with various firms and analysts expecting the US SEC to approve the spot Bitcoin ETF by January 10th, roughly 2 weeks out. Let me know if you feel we'll get that green light. Not everyone has been optimistic about the spot Bitcoin ETFs, though. Arthur Hayes, the co-founder of crypto exchange BitMEX, believes the spot ETFs could completely destroy Bitcoin as we know it if they're too successful. If not Bitcoin, such ETFs will likely compete with centralized crypto exchanges like Coinbase, as the ETF fees are expected to be lower than those on the exchanges, according to some Bloomberg analysts, and according to Quantum Economics founder, Mr. Greenspan. There is no direct conflict between self-custody and the spot Bitcoin ETFs because retail users will stick to self-custody. Now, quoting him here, personally speaking, I would never buy any sort of paper IOU forms of Bitcoin, but that's because I have the option of self-custody, he shared. Most institutions don't have that option, and he does make a good point. These ETFs are not for the plebs like you and I. Self-custody is always the best option. Not your keys, not your cheese, aka not your keys, not your coins. However, for the big asset managers and the big money, they need an option such as an ETF. He also shares there are zero advantages and plenty of disadvantages for retail investors to hold Bitcoin ETFs, such as the fee. You're going to be paying roughly 1% of your investment each and every year. So over the span of 20 years, that's 20% of your Bitcoin. So you got to keep that in mind. Way better to just hold your Bitcoin in cold storage. I agree with that sentiment 100%. Let me know your thoughts. But anyways, fam, as we continue our pumpage, let's dive into our next story of the day and discuss the latest with ARK Invest, Cathie Wood. The headline reads, ARK's Cathie Wood sees short-term effect of the spot Bitcoin ETF as sell on news. The growing anticipation around the potential approval of spot Bitcoin ETFs could negatively impact the Bitcoin price for the short term, according to Cathie Wood. Cathie Wood, founder and CEO of Chief Investment Officer of ARK, believes that some investors are likely to sell on the news once the spot ETF is approved by the SEC. Wood expects that some investors will not want to miss the opportunity of taking some profits, as there has been a big anticipatory move based on the expectation of potential approval of the spot ETF. She said in an interview with Yahoo Finance yesterday, the 26th, quoting Cathie Wood here, those who have been moving in and enjoying some nice profits will probably sell on the news. That's an expression that traders use. So you anticipate the event, beat up the price, and then sell on the news. Let me know if you agree or disagree with her sentiment. And while the short-term impact of the potential spot Bitcoin ETF approval could be associated with some investors selling, the long-term perspective is promising and is more important, according to Wood, quoting her again. That would be very very short term, because we think it is going to happen, there is that the SEC is going to be giving the spot Bitcoin ETF the green light for institutional investors to participate. Once approved, the spot Bitcoin ETF will become one of the easiest ways for institutions to access BTC, allowing them to allocate a small portion of trillions of dollars in assets into Bitcoin. The ARK CEO believes, and according to Wood, the price could move significantly if the institutional investors put at least 0.1% or 0.2% of their assets into Bitcoin, which has a supply cap of 21 million coins. Wood's ARK Invest is one of the 14 firms that have filed for the spot Bitcoin ETF with the SEC. ARK Spot Bitcoin ETF, the ARK 21 shares Bitcoin ETF, is developed in collaboration with the European crypto exchange traded product provider 21 shares. In her latest interview, Wood noted that the spot Bitcoin ETF discussions with the SEC have been very positive, adding more optimism about the potential of the first spot Bitcoin ETFs being approved by January 10th. Quoting her again, something did change within the last month to 6 weeks, Wood stated, adding the SEC changed its approach to the Bitcoin ETF reviews from silent denials to asking thoughtful, detailed technical questions. And according to Wood, that's a very positive move that has led to fruitful dialogues with the SEC. I think the outlook is bright for the spot Bitcoin ETF, and we do think it will be in January. So there you have it. All the major ETF analysts like James Seyfarth and Eric Balchunas are also anticipating 90% probability we get this ETF approved by January 10th. Let me know your thoughts, fam. When ETF approval? Let me know in the comments. Our next story is discussing Bitcoin smashing $100,000 after the approval of the Bitcoin ETF. We've even shared predictions on the show from Samson Mao that Bitcoin can soar as high as $1 million per coin off the back of the approval of the ETFs within days or weeks after that green light from the SEC. But here's a more humble prediction, but nonetheless, 5 reasons why the Bitcoin price should smash $100,000 per coin. Number 1, Bitcoin is validated. Boomers enter the market and issuers compete for dominance. The initial question to consider is why someone would wait until Bitcoin price surpasses the all-time high to start investing. Most individuals are either lazy or cautious, or a combination of the two, meaning they are hesitant to open an exchange account or invest in anything that hasn't received their broker's endorsement. Poor souls. Even if Grayscale offers Bitcoin-backed trust funds, there is little incentive for traditional investment brokers to offer such products. It's important to note that the median retirement savings for North Americans under 34 is only $17,600. Good Lord, not even enough to buy a half a bitty, while those between 35 and 64 have accumulated a substantial $142,000. Now we're talking. According to Vanguard, now the data suggests that millennials and Generation Z are not the ones who will propel the Bitcoin price to $100,000 a coin, and beyond. In essence, the first reason the spot Bitcoin ETF is crucial lies in the minimal effort required for the baby boomers to invest, and more significantly, by offering products where the asset manager retains the management fee, the incentives for the providing of the product increases significantly. This means that sales teams at BlackRock, Fidelity, ARK Invest, Bitwise, VanEck, and other issuers will be fully engaged in attracting both internal and external clients. Other funds managed by these multi-trillion-dollar asset managers may also be encouraged to invest in Bitcoin's newly launched ETF. Now, historically, the ETF industry has witnessed a concentration of assets amongst the top 2 issuers. For example, SPDR Gold Trust and iShares Gold Trust represent over 85% of the industry's assets under management. And additionally, the market leader State Street's GLD has an expense ratio of 0.4%, which is considerably higher than most of its competitors. This data underscores the importance of gaining an early advantage in terms of ETF hodlings. Now, the next factor that can excel Bitcoin above $100,000. Bitcoin receives regulatory clearance, and the spot ETF eases concerns for investment advisors. That's right. Regarding the regulation, there have never been a definitive statement from the US SEC regarding the legitimacy of Bitcoin, let alone from legislators. In fact, everyone's favorite senator, Warren, announced on December 11th that 5 more senators have agreed to co-sponsor one of her bills aimed at cracking down on the illicit use of cryptocurrency for money laundering and terrorism financing. In this regard, the support of BlackRock and Fidelity legitimizes the asset class. Now, when she points a finger at Bitcoin and crypto, there's 100 fingers pointing right back in her ugly face. For example, Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan Chase have paid over $38 billion in fine for illicit activity, money laundering, and spoofing precious metal markets. I had to throw that out there. Now, while the SEC's decision to limit the spot Bitcoin ETFs to cash-only creation and redemption may not be the ideal tax solution for investors, it dismisses regulatory concerns, as every Bitcoin held by these funds must be acquired by intermediaries pre-approved by the SEC. Essentially, the approval of the spot Bitcoin ETF significantly reduces regulatory risks. This difference also benefits investment advisors, as it spares potential investors from dealing with Bitcoin transactions. Investors themselves often prefer instruments that do not require specific tax regulations, making the ETF a much simpler option compared to direct crypto investment. These changes may initially appear uneventful, with the impact of the spot Bitcoin ETF approval not necessarily occurring in the first few hours or days. However, when these 5 favorable trends gain full momentum, it is not likely that Bitcoin will trade below $100,000 ever again. It is only a matter of time. So let me know if you agree or disagree with that sentiment, that these bullish factors will send Bitcoin north of 100,000 for once and for all. But anyways, family, now for our breaking story of the day. On-chain analyst Willy Woo shared 3 Bitcoin price predictions just recently on X in a new post, and one of them shows a scenario of Bitcoin reaching $11.5 million per coin. So let's break this baby down, and massive shout out to Willy Woo. The headline reads, crypto analyst Willy Woo shared 3 Bitcoin price scenarios to reach $11.5 million per coin. Let's just get right into it. Here's the tweet that he shared. I retweeted it this morning, and here's the tweet from December 23rd, quoting Willy Woo. A private banker asked me for some Bitcoin price scenarios. Here on the back of the envelope, the calculations using 2023 numbers. Bitcoin matches the gold market cap of $710,000 per coin. Number 2, 5% of the wealth is parked into Bitcoin, which would take us to $1.1 million per coin. And now for the most bullish scenario, the upper bound price, $11.5 million, meaning half of the wealth is BTC. And he continues, 5% of all wealth being parked into Bitcoin is not that far away. There are only 600 million adults holding $100,000 plus net worth. They have 85% of all the wealth. Bitcoin has 300 million plus investors today, continuing to grow exponentially. And he shares here a post he made back on October 26th of last year. Here is the time taken to grow Bitcoin's user base by a factor of 10. We are in the 9th iteration, going from 100 million to 1 billion users. The 10th iteration will be last, 100% global adoption, and it shows you the user growth and the time it has taken. Clearly, from 1 to 10, it only took 8 days back in 2009 after the Genesis block. From 10 to 100 took 8 days. From 100 to 1,000 took 5.5 months. Wow. From 1,000 to 10,000 took a year. From 10,000 to 100,000 took a year. From 100,000 to a mil back in 2013 took 2.5 years. From 1 mil to 10 mil took 3.5 years. And from 10 mil to 100 mil took 3 years in 2020. And he's ultimately predicting we can go from 100 million active users to 1 billion, potentially by the year 2025. What are your thoughts on that sentiment? Let me know in the comments right down below. And let's continue with this thread. Let's see if you got more in here. I'm going to click on that. So yeah, I mean, this can happen quite quickly. And he does mention here, to clarify in that initial post, user equals unique active user. Active means holding Bitcoin, accessing the economic properties of Bitcoin. Data is via a mix of forensic on-chain analysis, clustering addresses into entities, and unique ID verified accounts at the exchanges via the CCAF with the survey-based deduping. So there you have it, coming directly from Willy Woo. And before I dive deeper into the particular story, I want to share what's the latest from his timeline as well. In November, he wrote, we'll probably never see Bitcoin go below 30,000 again. And he was right, because we didn't go back below 30,000. If this on-chain pattern holds true, what you see here is Bitcoin's price discovery across 13 years. It is a counter map in Bitcoin supply according to the price hodlers paid for their coins and how it changed over time. Dense horizon bands. These are the price regions where much of the supply moved between investors, reflecting the strong agreed value. Pattern, whenever Bitcoin had strong bands and agreed price coming out of the bear market and leading into the next halving, the price never comes back to retest this band of support. And some context. Why up only? Bitcoin is far from a commodity market at saturation. What we're seeing across the 13 years of this chart is Bitcoin's widespread adoption. The network had 10,000 users in 2010. Today, there is well over 300 million people using it as a store of value value technology. This is only going to continue to climb with the spot Bitcoin ETF. And then Ched's chimed in, another analyst, 80% chance of sub 30,000 next 6 months, by the way. And Willy Woo responded, well, anything can happen in markets. It's all probabilities. Saying that probably never below 30,000 is an eye-raising thesis. And again, the normal odds for a volatile market, hence why I posted it. So there you go. Let me know if you agree or disagree with that sentiment from Willy Woo, and do you believe we'll never drop back below 30 G's ever again? Now, 10 hours ago, he shared one of my favorite on-chain indicators is the increase or decrease in the realized cap, which measures the capital being stored by the Bitcoin network. We're in the region where the money is being poured into the network at an increasing rate. And check out this Bitcoin network flows going wild. You gotta love it. And here for some more recent tweets that he shared. Let's check it out. Here he wrote December 24th on Christmas Eve. It is the eve before the spot Bitcoin ETF. The day is coming fast when Bitcoin becomes a mainstream bucket for wealth allocation. When that day comes, the top 1%, mostly wealthy, will hold 0.87 BTC. That's how little of it there is to go around, assuming 5% allocation. And he makes a good point. Like I said, there is very limited amount of Bitcoin currently available. And on the 23rd is where he initially shared this tweet. 5% of all the wealth being parked into Bitcoin is not that far away. There's only 600 million adults holding 100,000 plus net worth, and they have 85% of the wealth. Bitcoin has 300 plus million investors and continuing to grow exponentially. Preach. And as I shared earlier, we shared the 11.5 million scenario, which is his upper bound price range. Let me know if you agree or disagree on a bullish scenario, if we can see that price action. And if so, by what year? Let me know your honest thoughts. And out of the three, which scenario do you think is the most likely? The 710,000, the 1.1 million, or the 11.5 million, which would virtually mean all of the above? Let me know in the comments right down below. And now let's dive deeper into the story here. So Willy Woo, the famous on-chain analyst, recently shared his predictions for Bitcoin's potential price levels in various scenarios. And according to the analyst, these predictions were made in response to a question from a private banker looking for the potential Bitcoin price scenarios. Woo reveals the possible outcomes with his calculations based on 2023 figures. As I already mentioned, it could be anywhere from 710,000 per coin if we reach the market value of gold. And I think the gold market cap is roughly 10 trillion, in that ballpark. Correct me if I'm wrong, fam. And if we conquered 5% of all the assets invested into Bitcoin, we're going to be above 1.1 million. And if half the wealth in the world, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's north of 700 trillion, the total addressable market, that would send us to 11.5 million per BTC. Now that would be, in my opinion, even conservative. I've heard Michael Saylor make predictions that we can reach literally $100 million per coin, which is his most bullish prediction I've ever shared and covered here on the show. And that would mean Bitcoin tapping into 40% of the overall wealth in the world, referring to the total addressable market. So Woo believes that's a scenario of a 5% of all the wealth being transferred into Bitcoin is not a far-fetched possibility. He points out there are only 600 million adults worldwide with a net worth of 100,000, and these individuals own 85% of all the wealth. And according to Willy Woo, Bitcoin currently has more than 300 million investors and is growing exponentially, indicating a shift towards digital assets. Now, in the earlier analysis, Woo said Bitcoin investors are currently expecting higher prices and are reluctant to sell. That's right. Woo referenced the spent output profit ratio, which is the SOPR, which tracks the profit coins and when sold to new investors. Now, interestingly, the SOPR rose as the price fell, indicating that only investors who have made significant profits were selling, while the newer investors were waiting. So there you have it, my crypto fam. Let me know your thoughts on his bullish prediction of seeing the upper bound price of $11.5 million per coin. And by what year do you feel this can turn into fruition? Let me know in the comments right down below. So there you have it, my family.